3 seconds ago, you made a decision. You clicked on this video. You thought it was your choice. You thought your conscious mind weighed the options, analyzed the thumbnail, read the title, and decided this was worth your time. You were wrong. That decision was made approximately 400 milliseconds before you were even aware of it. Your subconscious mind had already committed to clicking your conscious mind. It was just along for the ride, creating a comfortable narrative that you were in charge. Welcome to the most uncomfortable truth you'll hear today. And by the end of this deep dive, you'll never see your own thoughts the same way again. I'm not here to give you surface-level psychology or recycled self-help nonsense. What you're about to discover has been hidden in plain sight, studied in classified research facilities, weaponized by trillion-dollar industries, and deliberately kept from mainstream conversation, because once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. This is your red pill moment, and there's no going back. Let me start with something that will shake your entire worldview. In the 1980s, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet conducted an experiment that would fundamentally challenge our understanding of free will. He asked participants to make a simple decision, to flex their wrist whenever they felt like it, completely spontaneously. Here's where it gets disturbing. Using electroencephalography technology, Libet measured brain activity, and what he discovered sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The brain showed a measurable spike in activity called the readiness potential, approximately 350 milliseconds before the person consciously decided to move their wrist. Read that again. The brain had already made the decision before the conscious mind was aware of making any choice. But it gets worse. Follow-up studies using more advanced functional magnetic resonance imaging technology push this timeline even further. Researchers like John Dylan Haynes at the Bernstein Center for Computational Neuroscience found that they could predict a person's decision up to 10 seconds before the person became consciously aware of their choice. 10 full seconds. That means right now, as you're watching this, decisions about whether to keep watching, whether to like this video, whether to check your phone, whether to get a snack, those decisions have already been made by unconscious processes in your brain. Your conscious mind is essentially a narrator creating stories about choices that have already happened. You are not the author of your thoughts. You are the audience. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is just about simple motor movements. Complex decisions are different. My career choices, my relationships, my values, those are conscious decisions. Wrong again. And let me tell you why. Your brain processes approximately 11 million bits of information every single second. 11 million. From visual input, sounds, smells, touch, internal body states, memories, predictions, everything happening around you and inside you. But here's the kicker. Your conscious awareness can only handle about 40 bits per second. 40 out of 11 million. That means 99.9996% of your brain's processing happens completely outside your conscious awareness. You are consciously aware of approximately 0.0004% of what your brain is actually doing right now. So what's handling the other 99.99%? Pattern recognition systems, unconscious algorithms, mental shortcuts called heuristics. And these systems are running your life right now, in this very moment. Let me prove it to you. Don't think about a pink elephant wearing a top hat dancing on a beach at sunset while juggling 3 pineapples. Too late. You just did. Even though I told you not to think about it, the moment I planted that language pattern, your brain had no choice but to construct that image. You didn't decide to imagine it. It just appeared in your mind's eye. because your unconscious pattern recognition system processed those words and automatically generated the corresponding mental imagery. This happens with everything. Every advertisement you see, every conversation you have, every piece of content you consume, every person you meet, patterns are being planted constantly, and your unconscious mind is executing them without your permission or awareness. But let's go deeper. Let's talk about something called the cocktail party effect. You're at a crowded party. Dozens of conversations happening simultaneously. You're focused on talking to someone right in front of you. But then, across the room, someone mentions your name. Instantly, your attention shifts. You heard your name even though you weren't consciously listening to that conversation. How? Your unconscious mind was monitoring all the conversations in the room simultaneously, filtering for relevant information, and your name triggered an automatic attention shift. You didn't decide to listen. Your unconscious pattern recognition system made that decision for you. This same mechanism is operating every moment of your life. Your unconscious mind is constantly scanning your environment, making decisions about what's important, what's threatening, what's rewarding, and then directing your conscious attention accordingly. By the time you become consciously aware of something, your unconscious mind has already decided it's worth your attention. You're not choosing what to notice. Your unconscious patterns are choosing for you. Now we get into the truly sinister stuff, something called priming, and it's one of the most powerful and disturbing psychological phenomena ever discovered. In one landmark study conducted by John Bargh at New York University, researchers had participants unscramble sentences containing words related to elderly people. Words like Florida, grey, wrinkle, retired, bingo, ancient. Seemingly innocent, right? Just a simple word puzzle. After completing this task, participants were told the experiment was over and they could leave. But here's what the researchers were actually measuring: how fast people walked down the hallway to the exit. The results: participants who unscrambled elderly-related words walked significantly slower than the control group who unscrambled neutral words. They had been unconsciously primed to behave like elderly people, and their bodies responded accordingly. Their gait changed, their speed decreased, their posture even shifted slightly. None of them were aware this was happening. When asked afterward, they had no idea that a simple word puzzle had changed their physical behavior. Think about the implications. Exposure to certain words, for just a few minutes, changed their physical behavior without any conscious awareness. But we're just getting started. Another study showed people images of money, even subliminal flashes they couldn't consciously perceive, lasting only milliseconds, and it made them more selfish, less helpful, and more likely to work alone. The mere concept of money, activated unconsciously in their minds, changed their social behavior dramatically. They became less likely to help someone who dropped papers. They sat further away from other people. They preferred to work on tasks alone rather than collaborate. All from seeing images of money they weren't even consciously aware of seeing. Researchers primed people with words related to achievement and competition. Words like win, strive, master, compete, succeed. Afterward, these people performed better on challenging tasks. They persisted longer when faced with difficult problems, but they also became more aggressive in their interactions and less cooperative with others. The competitive prime didn't just affect their performance, it changed their entire social orientation. People primed with words related to professors, like intelligent, scholarly, learned, erudite, performed better on trivia tests. People primed with words related to soccer hooligans, like rowdy, aggressive, violent, reckless, performed worse on the exact same tests. The unconscious stereotypes associated with these concepts literally changed their cognitive performance. not because they were trying harder or less hard, but because the primes activated different cognitive patterns. In another disturbing study, participants were primed with images of the American flag, shown so briefly they couldn't consciously register them. Afterward, their political attitudes shifted toward more conservative positions, even if they normally identified as liberal. The flag activated unconscious associations with nationalism, tradition, and authority, which then influenced their political thinking. They had no idea this was happening. Do you understand what this means? Every single thing you're exposed to, the shows you watch, the music you listen to, the people you follow on social media, the news you consume, the advertisements you see, the conversations you overhear, all of it is priming you, planting patterns, shaping your behavior, influencing your thoughts, changing your decisions, and you have absolutely no idea it's happening in the moment. The wallpaper on your phone, the colors in your room, the background music in stores, the font choices on websites, the specific words used in headlines, all of it carefully designed to prime specific psychological states and behaviors. You think you're just going about your day, making your own choices, but you're being primed constantly, and those primes are directing your behavior in ways you can't perceive. Now let's talk about who knows about these patterns and how they're weaponizing them against you every single day. Social media companies employ some of the world's leading neuroscientists, behavioral psychologists, and addiction specialists, not to make your experience better, not to help you connect with friends, to make it more addictive, to keep you scrolling, to maximize engagement at any cost to your well-being or mental health. They use something called variable ratio reinforcement schedules, a concept discovered by B.F. Skinner in his operant conditioning research. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. You pull the lever, you might get a reward, you might not. That unpredictability creates a dopamine response more powerful than consistent rewards. Every time you refresh your feed, you're pulling that lever. Will there be something interesting? Will someone have liked your post? Will there be a notification? Will there be a message? The uncertainty is what keeps you hooked, and the algorithms are specifically designed to optimize that uncertainty. They don't give you rewards on a predictable schedule. They vary it intentionally to maximize the addictive response. Sometimes you refresh, and there's something immediately interesting. Sometimes you have to scroll for a while. Sometimes there's nothing. That variation is deliberately engineered. But it goes deeper. These platforms track something called dwell time, how long you look at each piece of content. They measure your scroll speed in milliseconds. They track your hesitations. What makes you stop scrolling? What makes you click? What makes you comment? What makes you share? They monitor how your engagement changes based on time of day, day of week, what you looked at previously, who you interact with most. They're building a psychological profile more accurate than anything you could tell a therapist. Because they're measuring your revealed preferences, not your stated ones. They're tracking what you actually do, not what you say you do. And then they use that data, that incredibly detailed psychological profile, to show you content specifically engineered to trigger emotional responses. Outrage, fear, desire, validation, envy, nostalgia. Each emotion carefully selected because it drives engagement. Content that makes you angry gets more engagement than content that makes you happy, so the algorithm learns to show you things that will make you angry. Not because it's good for you, but because angry people click more, comment more, share more, stay on the platform longer. You think you're choosing what to watch? The algorithm chose for you 3 videos ago. It knows what you'll click before you do. Remember Libet's experiment? Remember that 10-second gap between unconscious decision and conscious awareness? The algorithm is exploiting that exact same lag. It's predicting your unconscious preferences and serving you content that matches them before your conscious mind even realizes what it wants. These companies have literally hired casino designers, people who spent decades perfecting the psychological manipulation of slot machines, to apply those same principles to social media feeds, the infinite scroll. No endpoint, no natural stopping point, just like a slot machine that never runs out of plays. The variable rewards, sometimes interesting content, sometimes not, just like a slot machine's variable payouts, the social validation through likes and comments, triggering the same reward centers as winning money. It's not an accident, it's engineered addiction. Let me show you another pattern that controls your decisions every single day. It's called anchoring, and once you see it, you'll notice it everywhere in your life. Here's how it works. The first number you hear in any negotiation or decision context becomes the anchor. Your brain uses it as a reference point for all subsequent judgments, even if that number is completely arbitrary and has no logical relationship to the decision you're making. In one study, researchers asked participants to write down the last 2 digits of their social security number, a completely random number that they already knew. Then they asked them to bid on items in an auction. Bottles of wine, boxes of chocolates, computer keyboards, textbooks. The result? People whose social security numbers ended in high digits, like 78 or 92, bid significantly more than people with low digits, like 14 or 23. A completely random number that had nothing whatsoever to do with the value of the items influenced what people were willing to pay. The average difference was enormous, sometimes 2 to 3 times higher bids from people with high-digit social security numbers. Your brain saw a number, any number, and used it as an anchor point for value judgments. That's how vulnerable your decision-making process is to arbitrary information. But it gets worse. In another study, researchers asked people whether Mahatma Gandhi died before or after age 9. Obviously, he died much later. Then they asked people to estimate his actual age at death. Another group was asked whether Gandhi died before or after age 140, then asked to estimate his actual age. The first group's average estimate was 50. The second group's average was 67. The absurd anchor, even though everyone knew it was wrong, still influenced their estimates. Retailers exploit this ruthlessly every single day. Why do you think items are priced at $19.99 instead of $20? It's not to save you a penny, because the anchor is the first digit you see, 19. Your brain categorizes it as in the teens rather than in the 20s, even though the difference is literally 1 cent. That first digit becomes the anchor, and your perception of the price is based on that anchor. Sale prices work the same way. Originally $100, now $50. That $100 anchor makes 50 feel like an incredible deal, even if the item was never actually worth $100. Even if the company inflated the original price specifically to make the sale price seem better, the anchor was planted. Your perception was manipulated. You think you're getting a great deal, but you're responding to an artificial anchor that was engineered to make you think that. Restaurant menus use this constantly. They'll put one extremely expensive item on the menu, like a $300 steak. Most people won't order it. That's not the point. The point is to anchor your perception of value. Suddenly, the $75 pasta dish seems reasonable by comparison. Without that $300 anchor, you might have thought $75 for pasta was outrageous. But with the anchor in place, it feels like a moderate choice. And this happens in every decision you make. Salary negotiations start with the first number mentioned. If the employer says we're offering $60,000, that becomes the anchor, And negotiations happen around that point. If you had said, I'm looking for 80,000 first, that would have been the anchor instead. The person who sets the anchor controls the negotiation. Real estate agents know this. They always show you the most expensive house first. Then everything else seems more affordable by comparison. Job listings do this. They post a salary range like 70 to 120,000. Your anchor becomes 120. You think that's the real salary, but they were always planning to offer closer to 70. The high anchor made the actual offer seem acceptable. Car dealerships do this. The sticker price is the anchor. Then they give you a discount. You feel like you won, but the sticker price was inflated specifically to make the discounted price seem like a deal. And this happens in your personal life too. If someone asks you for a huge favor that you refuse, then asks for a smaller favor, you're more likely to agree to the smaller one, because the huge favor was the anchor. It made the smaller favor seem reasonable by comparison. This is called the door-in-the-face technique, and it exploits anchoring to manipulate compliance. You're not making rational decisions based on objective value. You're responding to anchors that someone else planted, often deliberately, to manipulate your perception. Every price you see, every number you hear, every initial offer in a negotiation, it's potentially an anchor that's shaping your subsequent decisions without your awareness. Now we need to talk about one of the most powerful manipulation tools ever discovered: scarcity and loss aversion. And the psychological research behind this is absolutely wild. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman and his research partner Amos Tversky demonstrated through decades of research that humans feel losses approximately 2 to 2.5 times more intensely than equivalent gains. Losing $50 hurts more than finding $50 feels good. Losing a friendship hurts more than making a new friend feels good. Missing an opportunity feels worse than gaining an opportunity feels good. This is hardwired into your brain. It's an evolutionary adaptation. In our ancestral environment, losing resources could mean death. Missing an opportunity to gather food could mean starvation. Being excluded from the tribe could mean being killed by predators. So we evolved an incredibly strong aversion to loss. The pain of loss had to be strong enough to motivate us to avoid it at all costs. But here's how it's weaponized against you in the modern world. Only 3 items left in stock. Sale ends in 24 hours. Limited time offer. Exclusive access for the first 100 people. Act now or miss out forever. These doors close at midnight. Last chance. Going fast. Almost sold out. Every single one of these phrases is exploiting your loss aversion. They're making you feel like you're about to lose an opportunity, even if you never wanted the thing in the first place, even if you didn't know it existed 5 minutes ago. The pattern works like this. First, create artificial scarcity. Make something seem rare or limited even if it's not. Then, activate your loss aversion by framing the decision as avoiding a loss rather than achieving a gain. Finally, trigger impulsive decision-making before rational analysis can kick in by adding time pressure. And the data shows it's devastatingly effective at driving purchases and decisions that people later regret. Booking websites have perfected this manipulation. 3 other people are looking at this room right now. Only 2 rooms left at this price. 12 people booked this hotel in the last hour. Prices typically rise by 15% for these dates. We have only 1 room left at this price point. Every single element is engineered to make you feel scarcity and activate loss aversion. Even if those claims are technically true, and often they're exaggerated or completely fabricated, the way they're presented is manipulative. They're not giving you helpful information to make a better decision. They're triggering unconscious psychological patterns to force a quick decision before you can think clearly. Online courses do it constantly. Enrollment closes Friday. Only 50 spots available. Price increases after this week. Bonuses expire at midnight. The cart closes in 3 days. Even though the course is digital and can accommodate unlimited students, even though they'll run the same sale next month, they create artificial scarcity to trigger your loss aversion. Physical products do it. Limited edition release. Only 500 made worldwide. Once they're gone forever. Collectible item. Even if they'll make more later, even if there's nothing actually special about this batch, the scarcity framing changes your perception. Even content creators do it. This video might get taken down. YouTube might delete this. Watch before it's removed. They're creating artificial scarcity around information to drive views and engagement. And here's the darkest part. Once you're aware you might lose something, your brain literally changes how it processes that decision. Brain imaging studies show that the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking and long-term planning, shows decreased activity when loss aversion is triggered. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for emotional reactions and fear responses, lights up with intense activity. You're not thinking clearly. You're not weighing options rationally. You're reacting emotionally to the perceived threat of loss. And this is exactly what the manipulation is designed to do. Get you to make an emotional decision before your rational mind can intervene and ask questions like, do I actually need this? Is this really scarce? Is this a good deal? Will I regret this tomorrow? The scarcity doesn't even have to be real. Studies show that simply labeling a product as limited edition or saying only a few left makes people want it more and willing to pay more, even when they have no evidence that it's actually scarce. The label alone triggers the psychological response. Your unconscious mind sees the scarcity signal and activates loss aversion before your conscious mind can evaluate whether the scarcity is real. Humans are social creatures. We evolved in tribes where going against group consensus could literally get you killed or expelled, which in the ancestral environment meant almost certain death. So we developed an incredibly powerful unconscious mechanism called social proof. If everyone else is doing something, it must be safe, it must be right, it must be the smart choice. This served us well for thousands of years. If everyone in the tribe is running away from something, you should probably run too. Stopping to analyze whether the threat is real could get you killed. Just follow the group and survive. But in the modern world, this ancient survival mechanism is being exploited in ways our ancestors could never have imagined. Solomon Asch's conformity experiments in the 1950s showed this perfectly and disturbingly. Participants were put in a room with 7 other people who they thought were also participants, but were actually actors following a script. Everyone was shown a card with a line on it, then another card with 3 lines of obviously different lengths. The task was simple. Which line matches the original? It was painfully obvious. The answer was clear to anyone with working eyes. But here's what happened. The actors were instructed to unanimously give the wrong answer. And the results? 75% of participants went along with the group's incorrect answer at least once during the experiment, even when they could clearly see it was wrong, even when the correct answer was obvious, even when there was no pressure or penalty for disagreeing. They chose social conformity over observable reality. When interviewed afterward, some said they knew the answer was wrong, but didn't want to stand out. Others actually convinced themselves that the group must be right, and their own perception must be wrong. They literally doubted their own senses because of social pressure. You will literally deny what your own eyes show you if enough people around you disagree. That's how powerful social proof is. That's how deeply the need for conformity is wired into your brain. And now this mechanism is being industrialized and weaponized at scale. fake reviews, purchased followers, inflated view counts, bot comments, paid testimonials, fabricated user numbers, all of it designed to create the appearance of social proof, to trick your unconscious pattern recognition system into thinking everyone else thinks this is good, so it must be good. If this product has 10,000 five-star reviews, it must be great, right? If this influencer has 2 million followers, they must be worth following, right? If this video has 5 million views, it must be worth watching, right? Wrong. Instagram influencers buy followers by the thousands to appear more popular than they are. Amazon sellers pay for fake reviews to boost their ratings. YouTube channels use view-boosting services to inflate their numbers. Political campaigns create fake grassroots movements to manufacture the appearance of popular support. The numbers you see aren't real, but your brain responds to them as if they are. Your unconscious social proof mechanism doesn't distinguish between real and fake consensus. Even more insidious, the platforms know fake engagement exists. They could eliminate it if they wanted to, but they don't, because fake social proof drives real engagement. If you see a post with 10,000 likes, you're more likely to engage with it yourself. The fake social proof creates real social proof. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. The platforms benefit from the engagement, so they turn a blind eye to the manipulation, or only address the most egregious cases to appear like they're doing something. You've made decisions based on reviews that never came from real people. You've bought products because the star rating was high, not knowing those ratings were purchased. You've followed trends because everyone else seemed to be doing it, not realizing the everyone else was manufactured by bot accounts and paid promoters. You've trusted influencers because of their follower counts, not knowing that a significant percentage of those followers weren't real people. The social proof you trust is often a carefully constructed lie, and your unconscious mind, evolved over millions of years to trust group consensus, falls for it every single time because it can't tell the difference between real consensus and manufactured consensus. The pattern recognition system is too ancient to account for this modern form of manipulation. Here's a pattern that's simultaneously beautiful and disturbing. Reciprocity. When someone does something for you, you feel an almost irresistible urge to do something back. This is fundamental to human cooperation and society. It's how we build civilizations. You help me hunt today, I help you gather tomorrow. You watch my children, I watch yours next week. Reciprocity creates trust and cooperation. But watch how it's weaponized in modern marketing and persuasion. You walk into a grocery store. Someone at a booth offers you a free sample, just a tiny piece of cheese on a toothpick. Costs them maybe 5 cents. You eat it, and suddenly you're 30 to 40% more likely to buy that brand of cheese, even if you weren't planning to buy cheese at all, even if you don't particularly like the sample. Why? Because you accepted something from them. The reciprocity reflex activated. Your unconscious mind feels obligated to return the favor, so you buy the cheese. A 5-cent sample triggered a $10 purchase. That's a 200 times return on investment. Free trials work the same way. Try our software free for 30 days. They're not being generous. They're not doing you a favor. They're creating a reciprocity obligation. You use their product. You got value from it. Now you feel like you owe them. Even though the trial was a strategic marketing investment designed specifically to create that sense of obligation, not a gift. When the trial ends, you feel guilty canceling. You feel like you're taking advantage of their generosity if you don't pay. So you subscribe. The free trial created a sense of debt. Content creators do this constantly. I'm giving you this valuable information for free. I spent hours researching this. I'm sharing my secrets with you. That's not generosity. That's creating obligation. They give you something, triggering your reciprocity reflex, and then when they ask you to like, subscribe, share, or buy their course, you feel compelled to reciprocate. You feel like you owe them something in return for the free value they provided. I'm doing it right now, by giving you this information, by spending time explaining these patterns, by creating value for you. I'm triggering your reciprocity reflex, and part of your brain is already thinking about how to reciprocate. Maybe by liking this video, maybe by subscribing, maybe by sharing it with someone who needs to hear this. See how it works? The reciprocity reflex is so powerful that it works even when you know you're being manipulated. Awareness isn't enough to override the pattern because it's operating at the unconscious level, below conscious control. Studies show that reciprocity works even when the initial favor is unwanted or unrequested. The Hare Krishna movement used this brilliantly in airports in the 1970s. They would approach travelers and give them a flower as a gift before the person could refuse. Then they would ask for a donation. People gave money at much higher rates because they felt obligated by the flower, even though they didn't want it, and often threw it away immediately after donating. The unwanted gift still triggered the reciprocity reflex. Charities use this by sending you address labels or greeting cards in the mail before asking for donations. You didn't ask for them. You might not want them. But now that you have them, you feel obligated. Restaurants train servers to bring extra bread or drinks as a gift from the chef. Then your tips increase. The unsolicited gift created obligation. Car salespeople offer you coffee or water when you arrive. Small gesture, but it triggers reciprocity and makes you more likely to buy. Now we need to talk about stories, because humans don't think in facts and data. We think in narratives, and whoever controls the narrative controls your interpretation of reality. Your brain is a story-generating machine. It takes disconnected sensory input, random events, and weaves them into coherent narratives. This happens automatically. You can't stop it. Your brain needs stories to make sense of the world. And this is where things get really manipulative. Political framing is the clearest example of narrative control. The exact same policy can be described as tax relief or tax cuts for the wealthy. Same policy. Completely different narratives. And the narrative you hear first shapes your opinion more than the actual facts of the policy. Tax relief sounds like salvation from a burden. Tax cuts for the wealthy sounds like favoritism toward the rich. The framing determines your emotional response before you even understand the policy details. Death tax versus estate tax. Exactly the same thing. Different story. One makes you think about the government taxing you when you die, taking your money, punishing your death. The other makes you think about wealthy estates being taxed, about fairness, about the rich paying their share. The narrative determines your position more than the policy itself. Climate change versus global warming. Same phenomenon, different narratives. Global warming sounds hot and immediate and dangerous. Climate change sounds gradual and neutral and less threatening. Energy independence versus fossil fuel extraction. Gun rights versus gun violence prevention. Pro-life versus anti-choice. Pro-choice versus anti-life. Every political issue has competing narratives, and the narrative that reaches you first, that gets repeated most often, that fits your existing worldview, that's the narrative that will shape your opinion. Not the facts, the story. News media does this constantly, not by lying, although sometimes they do that too, but by choosing which facts to emphasize, which context to provide, which story to tell. A protest can be framed as peaceful demonstration or violent riot. Same event, different story. An economic policy can be framed as stimulus or spending. Same policy. Different narrative. A politician can be described as bold or reckless. principled or stubborn, tough or cruel. Same person, different story. Every news story is a narrative choice. Which facts go in the headline? Which quotes get included? Which experts get interviewed? Which context gets provided? Which history gets mentioned? These choices shape your worldview more powerfully than the facts themselves, because the facts without a narrative are just noise. The narrative gives them meaning, and the media outlet, the journalist, the editor, they choose that narrative. But the most insidious narrative hijack happens in your own mind. Your brain is constantly creating stories about who you are, what you want, why you do things, and those stories are often completely wrong. Remember we talked about how decisions are made unconsciously. Your conscious mind doesn't know why you made a decision, so it makes up a story, a rationalization, a narrative that makes sense, and you believe that story. You think it's the truth. You think it's accurate, but it's fiction. You buy an expensive watch. Your conscious mind says, I bought this because it's a quality timepiece and a good investment. I appreciate fine craftsmanship. This will last for years. But the real reason? Maybe you were primed by an advertisement you saw last week. Maybe you're seeking social status and validation. Maybe you're trying to fill an emotional void or distract yourself from a problem. Maybe you're trying to prove something to yourself or others. Your unconscious made the decision based on these factors. Your conscious mind just created a comfortable narrative after the fact that makes you sound rational and thoughtful. This is called confabulation, and you do it constantly, every single day, multiple times per hour. You don't know why you really do things. You just make up stories that sound reasonable, that fit your self-image, that make you feel good about yourself. And then you believe those stories are the truth. When someone asks why you chose that career, why you married that person, why you believe that political position, why you bought that product, you give them a story. But that story is largely fiction, created by your conscious mind to explain decisions your unconscious mind already made. Studies of split-brain patients, people who had the connection between their brain hemispheres severed as treatment for epilepsy, show this perfectly. Researchers would show an image to only the right hemisphere, which doesn't control language, then ask the left hemisphere, which does control language, why the person did something. The left hemisphere had no idea. It didn't see the image, but it would immediately create a plausible story to explain the behavior. Without hesitation, without uncertainty, it would confabulate a narrative that sounded completely reasonable, even though it was completely wrong. Your brain does this all the time. You are not the reliable narrator of your own life. You're an unreliable narrator being fed scripts by unconscious patterns, past conditioning, emotional needs, and external manipulation. The story you tell yourself about who you are and why you do things is largely fiction. A comforting narrative that helps you feel like you're in control, like you understand yourself, like your life makes sense. But it's not the truth. Let's talk about what might be the most important pattern of all in the modern world: attention. Because attention is the most valuable resource on the planet right now, more valuable than oil, more valuable than gold. Your attention is finite. You have maybe 16 waking hours a day. That's it. That's all you get. And during those hours, thousands of entities are competing for every single second of your focus. Social media platforms, streaming services, news outlets, advertisers, apps, games, websites, all fighting for your attention with increasingly sophisticated and aggressive tactics. And they're winning because they understand something about your brain that you don't. Your brain is wired to prioritize certain types of information automatically: novelty, threat, social information, reward, potential, sexual signals. These things automatically capture your attention. because in our evolutionary environment, they were critical for survival and reproduction. New information might be about food sources or dangers. Threats need immediate attention to avoid harm. Social information determines your status and relationships. Rewards provide resources. Sexual signals are about reproduction. Paying attention to these things kept you alive and helped you reproduce. But now those ancient mechanisms are being exploited by modern technology. Every notification is engineered to trigger your novelty response. Something new, something changed, you must check it. Every headline is crafted to suggest threat or controversy. You must read it to know if you're safe. Every autoplay feature hijacks your attention before you can make a conscious choice to disengage. Every infinite scroll removes natural stopping points. Every algorithm learns what captures your attention and serves you more of it. Your ancient attention mechanisms are being weaponized against you. Research from Microsoft showed that the average human attention span dropped from 12 seconds in the year 2000 to 8 seconds by 2015. That study has been criticized for its methodology, but the trend is clear. 8 seconds, that's shorter than a goldfish. But it's not that humans are getting stupider. It's not that our brains are degrading. It's that the environment has been engineered to fragment attention. Every platform optimizes for engagement, which means optimizing for attention capture, which means making it harder for you to sustain focus on any one thing for more than a few seconds. Videos start with hooks in the first 3 seconds, or you leave. Articles put the most shocking information in the first paragraph, or you stop reading. Social media feeds show you the most engaging content first, or you close the app. Everything is optimized for immediate attention capture, because if they don't grab you instantly, someone else will. You think you're choosing what to pay attention to, but attention capture happens before conscious choice. By the time you're aware of what you're looking at, your attention has already been hijacked. The notification already pulled your focus. The autoplay already started the next video. The algorithm already decided what to show you next. Your conscious decision-making process is bypassed completely. And every second of attention they capture is a second of your life you'll never get back. Spent consuming content designed not to inform you, not to improve your life, not to help you grow, but to keep you engaged long enough to see another advertisement, to generate another data point for the algorithm, to keep you on the platform for one more minute. The average person spends over 7 hours a day looking at screens. 7 hours. That's nearly half of your waking life. And the vast majority of that time is not intentional. It's not chosen. It's attention hijacked by systems designed to exploit your unconscious patterns. You're not living your life. You're being farmed for attention. Your life is being extracted second by second and converted into advertising revenue and engagement metrics. Think about what you could do with 7 hours a day. Learn a language, master an instrument, build a business, write a book, develop deep relationships, exercise and get healthy. Instead, that time is being harvested by systems that understand your unconscious mind better than you do, systems designed by the smartest behavioral scientists and engineers on the planet, with billions of dollars in funding, with massive computing power, analyzing your every click and scroll, all focused on one goal: keep you looking at the screen. Here's a pattern that's both fascinating and terrifying. Emotions are contagious. Not metaphorically, not like a saying, literally. Emotions spread from person to person like a virus, and it happens completely unconsciously. When you see someone smile, mirror neurons in your brain fire, creating a subtle mimicry of that expression on your own face. You might not even notice it happening, but your facial muscles slightly mimic what you see. And that physical mimicry triggers the associated emotion in your brain. You start to feel happier. All of this happens in milliseconds, completely outside conscious awareness. Facebook conducted a controversial experiment in 2014 that revealed just how powerful this effect is. They manipulated the emotional content of users' news feeds without telling them. Some people saw more positive posts from their friends. Others saw more negative posts. Then Facebook measured the emotional tone of what those users posted afterward. The results? People exposed to positive content posted more positive content themselves. People exposed to negative content posted more negative content. Emotions spread through the network like a contagious disease. The study created massive backlash when it became public, but not because it didn't work, because it worked too well. Facebook proved they could manipulate the emotional state of millions of users just by changing what appeared in their feeds. Your emotional state is being influenced by the content you consume and the people around you, digital or physical, and you have no conscious awareness it's happening. You think you're sad because of something in your life, but maybe you're sad because you spent an hour scrolling through content deliberately curated to make you feel negative emotions, because those emotions drive more engagement. Angry people comment. Sad people scroll looking for something to make them feel better. Anxious people check constantly for updates. These emotions are good for the platform's engagement metrics, even if they're terrible for your mental health. You think you're angry about a political issue because you have strongly held principles, but maybe you're angry because the algorithm showed you a dozen rage-inducing posts in a row, priming you for outrage, making you more likely to engage, comment, share, argue with strangers. The algorithm learned that making you angry keeps you on the platform longer, so it serves you anger-inducing content. Your emotion isn't about the issue, it's about the manipulation. This has profound implications for mental health. Depression, anxiety, outrage, fear. These emotions can be socially transmitted through digital networks. Studies show that having a depressed friend increases your likelihood of depression. But now you have hundreds of connections on social media, and the algorithm decides which of their posts you see. If the algorithm shows you mostly negative content, because that content drives engagement, you're essentially being exposed to emotional contagion at scale. And because it's happening unconsciously, you can't defend against it. You don't know it's happening until you're already feeling it. The content you consume is not just information, it's emotional programming. It's not neutral. It's shaping your baseline emotional state, your worldview, your sense of what's normal, even your sense of identity. If you consume content that makes you feel outraged all day, you become an outraged person. If you consume content that makes you anxious all day, you become an anxious person. Not because of your circumstances, but because of the emotional patterns being programmed into you through emotional contagion. Okay, we've gone deep into the darkness. You now understand how thoroughly your mind is being manipulated, how your decisions aren't really yours, how patterns you're not aware of are controlling your behavior every moment of every day. So what do you do about it? How do you break free? How do you take back control? First, accept the uncomfortable reality. You cannot eliminate unconscious processing. You cannot become fully conscious of all the patterns influencing you at every moment. That's not how the human brain works. That's not even theoretically possible. Your conscious mind can only process 40 bits per second. The other 11 million bits are always going to be unconscious. Anyone who tells you they've achieved complete conscious control is either lying or delusional. The unconscious mind is not your enemy. It's not something to eliminate. It's what allows you to function. But you can develop meta-awareness. You can learn to notice when patterns are being triggered. You can create space between stimulus and response. This is the real goal. Not perfect control, but awareness. Not eliminating unconscious processing, but catching it in action more often. Not being immune to manipulation, but recognizing it when it's happening. Start with your attention. The single most important skill you can develop in the modern world is the ability to notice when your attention has been hijacked and consciously redirected. This is essentially meditation applied to everyday life. Mindfulness not as a spiritual practice, but as a practical defense mechanism against attention theft. When you pick up your phone, pause for just 1 second. Ask yourself one simple question. Did I consciously decide to do this? Or am I responding to an unconscious pattern? Am I checking my phone because I have a specific purpose? Or because it's become an automatic behavior? Most of the time, honestly, it's the pattern. You didn't decide to pick up your phone. Your hand just reached for it automatically. That moment of awareness, that 1 second pause, gives you a choice. You might still check your phone, but now it's a choice instead of an unconscious compulsion. Do this consistently, and you'll start to notice how often you act without conscious intention, how often your behavior is automatic, how often you're running on patterns instead of making deliberate choices. This awareness is uncomfortable at first, because it reveals how little conscious control you actually have. But it's necessary. You can't change patterns you're not aware of. Second, audit your inputs ruthlessly. Everything you consume is priming you, shaping your patterns, influencing your behavior. Garbage in, garbage out. This isn't a metaphor. It's literally how your brain works. If you spend hours consuming outrage content, you will become an outraged person. If you consume anxiety-inducing news constantly, you will become an anxious person. If you consume content that makes you feel inadequate, you will feel inadequate. This isn't about willpower or being strong enough to resist. This is about engineering your environment. Ask yourself hard questions. What am I consuming? Why? Is this making me better or worse? Is this informing me or manipulating me? Is this helping me grow or keeping me distracted? Is this adding value to my life or stealing my time? Be ruthlessly honest. Most of the content you consume probably fails these tests. Cut it out. Create friction for negative patterns. Delete social media apps from your phone. You can still access them, but now you have to make a conscious choice to open a browser and log in. That friction, that extra step, creates space for awareness. It interrupts the automatic pattern. You might still use social media, but you'll use it less compulsively and more intentionally. Remove the infinite scroll by using browser extensions. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Make your phone black and white to reduce its addictiveness. Put it in another room when you're trying to focus. These aren't extreme measures. They're basic self-defense. Third, study your own patterns like a scientist studying a subject. Keep a decision journal, not for productivity or gratitude or any of that typical self-help stuff. Keep it to track your decision-making process. When you make a significant decision, any decision where you spend money, commit time, or change your behavior, write down what you think the reasons are in the moment. Be specific. Then, a week later, look back and analyze it honestly. Were those really the reasons? Or were you confabulating? What unconscious factors might have influenced you? You'll start to see patterns emerge. Maybe you make impulsive purchases when you're stressed. Maybe you agree to commitments you don't want when someone uses reciprocity. Maybe you're more susceptible to social proof late at night when you're tired. Maybe certain people consistently trigger certain behaviors in you. Over time, you'll build a map of your own vulnerabilities, your own blind spots, your own unconscious patterns. This self-knowledge is power. Once you know your patterns, you can predict when you're vulnerable and put safeguards in place. If you know you make bad decisions when you're hungry, don't go grocery shopping hungry. If you know you're susceptible to scarcity tactics, implement a 24-hour rule before any purchase framed as urgent. If you know you're influenced by social proof, actively question why something is popular before jumping on board. Fourth, and this is crucial, accept that you'll still be influenced. You'll still fall for manipulation sometimes. You'll still have your attention hijacked. You'll still make decisions based on unconscious patterns. The goal isn't perfection. The goal isn't becoming some perfectly rational being who never falls for anything. That's impossible. You're human. Your brain works on patterns. Unconscious processing is fundamental to who you are. The goal is awareness. The goal is making conscious choices a little more often than you do now. The goal is recognizing when you're being played and deciding whether you're okay with it. Sometimes you'll choose to go along with the manipulation anyway. Maybe you enjoy the free sample, even though you know it's triggering reciprocity. Maybe you find value in social media, despite the attention hijacking. And that's fine. The difference is now it's actually a choice, not an unconscious pattern running you. Progress is incremental. You don't go from completely unconscious to perfectly aware overnight. You catch yourself a little more often. You pause before reacting a little more frequently. You question your own narratives a little more deeply. Over weeks and months and years, these small improvements compound. You become more present, more intentional, more aware. Not perfect, but better. Now, we need to address the elephant in the room, the question that's probably been building in your mind throughout this entire video. If all of this is true, if decisions are made unconsciously, if patterns control our behavior, if we're constantly being manipulated, if our conscious mind is just making up stories after the fact, do we even have free will? Is there any real choice at all? Or are we just biological machines running predetermined programs? This is the hardest question, the most uncomfortable question, and I'm not going to give you a comfortable answer or a neat resolution because I don't think there is one. The traditional concept of free will, the idea of a conscious self that makes unconstrained choices independent of prior causes, the idea that you could have done otherwise in any given moment, that doesn't exist. The research is clear on this. Conscious choice is mostly an illusion. Your unconscious brain makes decisions based on genetics, past experiences, current circumstances, and neurochemical states. Then your conscious mind rationalizes them after the fact and claims credit. But that doesn't mean you're a helpless robot. That doesn't mean nothing matters. That doesn't mean you should just give up. There's a more sophisticated understanding of agency that actually fits the evidence. It's not the free will of philosophy textbooks, but it's something. Think of it like this. You don't choose your thoughts. Thoughts arise in consciousness based on unconscious processes you don't control. You didn't choose to be interested in this video. That interest arose based on factors you're not aware of. You don't choose your initial emotional reactions. They happen automatically, but you can choose which thoughts to engage with and which to let go. You can choose which impulses to act on and which to resist. You can choose which patterns to strengthen through repetition and which to weaken through disuse. You can develop patterns of meta-awareness, habits of questioning your own thinking, practices of pausing before reacting. These become new patterns, new unconscious processes that make you more aware. It's not free will in the traditional sense. You're not free from causation, but you're not completely determined either. You're somewhere in between. You can engineer your environment to make certain patterns more or less likely. You can't directly control what thoughts arise, but you can control what inputs you expose yourself to. Knowing those inputs will shape what thoughts arise. You can't force yourself to want different things, but you can understand what you want and why. and then decide whether those wants serve you. It's not free will. It's something more like degrees of freedom within constraints. You're not free from patterns. You're made of patterns, but you can learn to work with them, shape them, choose which ones to follow and which ones to resist. You can become more aware of the patterns running you, and that awareness itself changes the patterns. This might sound depressing, like I'm telling you that you're not really in control of anything, but it's actually liberating. Because once you stop trying to achieve perfect conscious control, once you stop beating yourself up for being human, once you accept that you're a pattern-based system, you can focus on what actually works, building better habits, creating better environments, developing awareness, working with your unconscious mind instead of fighting against it. You can't control the thoughts that arise, but you can control what you do with them, and that's enough. That's actually more than enough, because most people never even get to that level of awareness. Most people never question their thoughts, never examine their patterns, never wonder why they do what they do. They just react and rationalize and repeat. You now have something they don't. You can see the patterns. You can see when you're being manipulated. You can create space for choice, even if that choice is still influenced by factors you're not fully aware of. You can be more intentional, more deliberate, more conscious, even if you can't be perfectly so. So here's where we end up after this entire journey into the darkness of your own mind. You are a pattern recognition machine living in a world deliberately engineered to exploit those patterns. Your conscious mind is not in control the way you thought it was. Your decisions are influenced by factors you're not aware of. Your attention is being hijacked constantly. Your emotions are being manipulated. Your behavior is being shaped by priming, anchoring, scarcity, social proof, reciprocity, narratives, and a dozen other mechanisms we didn't even have time to cover. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not paranoia. This is documented scientific reality, studied in thousands of peer-reviewed papers, proven in countless experiments, and weaponized by industries worth trillions of dollars. The manipulation is real. The patterns are real. The lack of conscious control is real. But you now have something most people don't. Awareness. You can see the patterns now. You can notice when they're being triggered. You can create space for choice. You can question your own thoughts. You can audit your inputs. You can engineer your environment. You can study your vulnerabilities. You can work with your unconscious mind instead of being blindly controlled by it. And here's the ultimate test of whether you've really understood this, whether you've really internalized these concepts, or whether they're just interesting information that you'll forget by tomorrow. What are you going to do with this video? Are you going to like it because you consciously decided it was valuable and want to support this kind of content? Or because I triggered your reciprocity reflex by giving you information, and now you feel obligated? Are you going to share it because you genuinely want to help others see these patterns? Or because sharing makes you feel virtuous and intelligent and gets you social validation from your network? Are you going to subscribe because you authentically want more content like this? Or because the social proof of other subscribers and the scarcity framing of limited access triggered an unconscious response? Are you going to comment because you have genuine thoughts to contribute? Or because the algorithm rewards engagement and commenting makes you feel heard? I've spent this entire video explaining in detail how patterns control your behavior, how your mind is constantly being manipulated, how your conscious decisions are largely illusions. And then I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Do you see the pattern there? Do you see what I'm doing? I'm using the very mechanisms I just explained to influence your behavior right now. The reciprocity of free value, the social proof of views and subscribers, the scarcity of exclusive information, the narrative framing that makes you the hero who sees through manipulation. And the really interesting question, the question that matters more than anything else, is this. Now that you're aware of it, now that I've explicitly told you what I'm doing, does it still work? Can awareness overcome the pattern? Can consciousness override the unconscious programming? The truth is, it probably still works, at least partially, because awareness alone isn't enough to override deeply ingrained unconscious patterns that evolved over millions of years and have been reinforced countless times throughout your life. But at least now you know. At least now you can see what's happening. At least now you have a choice, even if that choice is still influenced by factors you're not fully aware of. The patterns that control your mind aren't going away. They can't go away. They're fundamental to how your brain processes information. But with awareness, with practice, with intentional effort over time, you can become less of a puppet and more of a participant. You can make more conscious choices, even if those choices are still influenced by unconscious patterns. You can see the strings, even if you can't completely cut them. The goal isn't to escape the patterns. That's impossible. The goal is to see them clearly, to work with them, to choose which ones to follow and which ones to resist, to become aware when they're being triggered, to create space between stimulus and response, to question your own thoughts and motivations, to engineer better inputs and environments, to build meta-awareness that allows you to catch yourself in the act of being unconscious. You'll never be fully in control, but you can be more awake than you are now. You can be more aware. You can be more intentional. You can be more conscious of the unconscious processes running you. And in a world deliberately designed to keep you asleep, to keep you reacting, to keep you consuming, to keep you distracted, that awareness is everything. The patterns are everywhere, in every advertisement you see, every headline you read, every product you buy, every political message you consume, every social media post that appears in your feed, every notification that vibrates in your pocket, every conversation you have, every thought that arises in your mind. Once you start seeing them, you can't unsee them. The world looks different. Your own mind looks different. You see the manipulation everywhere. And that's uncomfortable. It's unsettling to realize how much of what you thought was your own thinking is actually patterns planted by others. It's disturbing to recognize how little conscious control you actually have. It's scary to see how constantly and effectively you're being manipulated. But it's also empowering, because awareness is the first step toward agency. You can't change what you can't see. Welcome to the other side. Welcome to the uncomfortable reality that most people never see. Welcome to the awareness that you're a pattern-based system, living in a world designed to exploit those patterns. You can't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. But you can move forward with eyes open. You can be more conscious. You can be more aware. You can be more intentional. The hidden patterns that control your mind are no longer quite so hidden. You see them now. The question is, what will you do with that awareness? That's up to you. Or is it? Think about it.